Hi there, everybody. How's it going? It's good to see you all here again today. Welcome back to the Lost Media Archive. It's great to see you here all back at the archive today. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a lost commercial or PSA called Hitogata. So, let's begin. In 2004, on the anonymous image board website known as 2chan, a thread was created about the creepy commercials from their past, and one of the replies to this initial thread was created on October 6, 2004, and it entailed a creepy commercial the anonymous user had seen back when they were a kid. The commercial that they described featured a black background and two white stick figures, and there was a constant king king as described the sound ringing throughout the commercial, and the stick figures would disappear and reappear here, would constantly disappear and reappear with there being one on the left and one on the right, with who was one disappearing switching. The one on the right would disappear and reappear, then the one on the left would disappear and reappear, and that's how it went on for the whole ad. And they remember the phrase, every 2 seconds on Earth, a man dies, being repeated throughout the entirety of the commercial, just with it only being a black background and two stick figures, with one disappearing and reappearing, then switching to another one, to next one disappear and reappear, and the other one disappear and reappear. Now, many people on the thread claim that they remembered it as very similar, had remembered that commercial, and soon people began talking about it. Now, 2chan is the Japanese version of 4chan, so all the users on there were Japanese, and so we know the commercial comes from the country of Japan, of course. And people began coming out to talk about their how they remembered seeing it, and soon enough, more and more people began coming out to talk about recalling their recollections of the commercial. Now, the search for Hitogata was revived in 2019 when on one of the Japanese versions of 4chan, a thread was created in 2019 about which was dedicated entirely to finding the commercial. This revived the search, and more people began working harder than ever to try and find the commercial. Now, many people have come out and claiming they've remembered it, and due to how many people have claimed to remember it, there are a few variations. Some people claim that there was a railroad crossing background, and while some claim that there wasn't a railroad crossing background. The original version said it was just on a black screen, though many people remember it also being a railroad crossing background. It's been estimated that the commercial aired sometime, most likely in the late 1990s to the early 2000s, by looking at the various recollections of various members of people who have recalled seeing the commercial. Now, allegedly, there was a reference made. Someone described seeing the commercial all the way back on November 2nd, 1999, as a archived comment from a thread about creepy commercials was discovered. And in this comment, the anonymous user described them seeing a very creepy commercial, two stick figures on a black background, one disappearing and reappearing, and the other one disappearing and reappearing constantly. But the actual thread itself that this comment is saved from is completely lost. So the legitimacy of this the November 2nd, 1999 comment is up for debate, and whether or not it truly exists is unsure. Now, people have discovered various commercials very similar to what's been described in Hitogata, but there is no evidence to actually say that it existed, besides the testimony of various Japanese people throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s who all remember a very similar commercial, though with some slight variation depending on who you ask. Though there, and but besides this, there was no actual legit concrete evidence that for such a commercial was produced and aired on television. Now, exactly what it was for is unknown. Most people agree that the commercial was only 15 seconds long. Some people think that it was a railroad safety PSA, and some people recall it being shown at schools, while most people recall it being shown at late night television. So many people, and due to the kang kang sound being similar to the sound of a railroad crossing, and people remembering seeing a railroad cross, many people believe that it was possibly for rail, that it was possibly to tell children about railroad safety. Some people also believe that it was an advertisement for some sort of company that was trying to sell some sort of product. Some people possibly suspect that they could have been trying to sell life insurance to people, and some people possibly also could have believed it had something to do with some sort of suicide prevention PSA, as suicides by train are fairly common, and so many people believe that that's what it could have been referring to. Every 2 seconds, a man dies via having himself run over by a train. He commit suicide. But of course, exactly what it was, we don't know, as we can only speculate. Many people see the fact that from we know that it was most likely 15 seconds long from most recollections, being around time period, being around that length. Some people doubt it could have been a PSA, as some people think 15 seconds isn't long enough to get a point across the message. And like I said, there are many commercials that are very similar to it that feature white stick figures on some sorts of different types of backgrounds, and very surreal commercials which feature again plain stick figures on backgrounds. And some people figure out that there is no Hitogata, but simply just a amalgamation of different misremembered memories, and that all the people are thinking of different things or thinking of stuff that we already know about, and that when they had heard about Hiragata, it was familiar enough that they thought this is what they had saw, and that their brain melded the ideas and to the point where really thought it could happen, because the brain is very susceptible to manipulation. It really is. You may not think so, but it is very easy for the brain to be manipulated. So some people think that there is no Hitagata, but due to the fact that so many people claim to have seen it, and so many people have very similar, clear memories to it, though there are slight variations from case to case to case, but majority across the board, most people remember the exact same thing, with only occasional slight differences. Is that most people believe that there possibly, most likely, was some kind of Hitagata-esque commercial, or the commercial themselves that exist. Now, the first ever recreation of it was actually made all the way back in 2004, and the original 2004 recreation is the most well known, which is kind of surprising that the first ever recreation of it even predates YouTube. Kind of wild, isn't it? And of course, over the years, there have been many, many recreations with with each version very different, being very different, as people's interpretations of it are, of course, all very different. Now, whether or not it exists or not, we may never know, really, because, again, there is no evidence at all. Now, one thing I want to point out is that in Japan, they don't differentiate between commercials and PSAs. They just call them CMs. They don't. We in the United States of America, we put an explicit difference between them. A public service announcement and an advertisement trying to sell you things, but they don't make a distinct. But they don't make a. But there in Japan, they don't make a category distinction between the two, so that might make it a little more difficult. And Hitogata isn't the name of the commercial. That name was made up. But it roughly translates to humanoid when you translate from Japanese into English. But besides that, that's really all we know about it. Hopefully, more information will come out soon. Who knows? Maybe it does exist, maybe it doesn't. Anyways, that's all I gotta say, ladies and gentlemen. Bye. Have a nice time. I'll see y'all around here. Back again at the Lost Media Archive. Bye. Have a nice time.